Welcome to Teachers, edition number 2. We were so excited at the response to our first discussion with these excellent teachers from around the world. We heard you, we saw your comments and appreciated them, and we were glad to see you hit that share button and pass this along. This is what LEA is about, connecting Lutheran teachers from everywhere to be able to encourage and equip each other. We picked a new topic here. We thought we'd pick a topic that was important to everyone and look at it in 3 different ways. So we want these discussions to be shorter so that if you're finding it on social media and you've got 10, 15 minutes, you can go ahead and listen to it then and then share it with other people. We're going to talk about 3 issues having to do with assessment. And I know that sounds a little bit boring, but trust me, these guys can make it interesting. So our next time we meet, we're going to be talking about some paradigm changes in assessment, how assessment is just different under these circumstances. Our last discussion is going to be about what are we going to do next year when all these students come back and we've got to figure out where everyone's at. But for right now, we want to talk about that issue that is pressing. We want to talk about report cards. So before we dive in, let's go ahead and have a quick introduction. Kiara, why don't you start?
Hi, I am Kiara Denholm. I am at Our Redeemer Lutheran in Dallas, Texas. Erin, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Erin Rogers. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm at First Lutheran there. Cody, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cody Collier. I am in Anchorage, Alaska at Anchor Lutheran School, teaching 4th and 5th grade. And last but not least, Drew, up to you.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone. I'm Drew Gerdes. I'm the early childhood principal at Concordia International School here in Shanghai, China, where we are actually now entering our 4th month of what we are calling home-based learning. It's certainly been a journey, and I know that many of you in the States are seeing a different type of journey based on where your location is. I'm excited to share that actually this next week, we will start to reopen parts of our campus. Being in China, there are certainly different levels, a lot of red tape and different government connections that we have to follow through, but we have been approved to begin reopening our campus, starting with our high school students. And we're actually doing a staggered start and working backwards. And so this next week, we'll be opening up grades 11 and 12, and then a week later, opening up grades 9 and 10, and then working backwards. However, we probably won't be able to open up our elementary and early childhood divisions this year, so we'll continue in our practice of home-based learning for our youngest learners, but something to celebrate.
Yeah, that's very good. And hopefully something the rest can look forward to as they're thinking about next year or what's going to be happening this summer. I love the way we begin because we begin so much like Lutheran teachers. Kiara was the class leader, and then everybody just came in line. We are good. We have this down. So report cards, people. In my first few years of teaching, report card due dates almost always took me by surprise. And if you know me very well, you would not be surprised about that at all. I think it was because I was just inundated with the day-to-day stuff, and then I'd turn the page in the lesson plan book and go, oh, report cards are due. And I'm wondering if we're not feeling that way now, some of the teachers. How are report cards changing now because of these new circumstances?
Well, I think as a staff, we talked about wanting to hold our kids accountable and still counting the work that they're doing, because we have a lot of kids that are putting forth a lot of effort, and we want to reward them for that. So I think it just is a modification of our normal grading because the work's modified too. So some of our things, a lot of our things are going to be completion based. You know, did you give your best effort? Did it look like when I went over it, you understood the content? Touching base back with them on that. Was it turned in on time? That kind of thing. So.
Yeah, we ran into a lot of conversations on this also on how do we grade work that's done? And we even kind of ran into what about those who haven't turned in work? Because you know, that we have those. You have those students that have not turned maybe anything in, and we looked and we were saying, well, some of these could potentially get 100% from not turning anything in if then we're grading everything, or then it's a 0. So what we did is kind of came up with a separate grading system. So we had to, with our online system, continue percentages with how we can plug them in and print out our report cards. But we kind of turned it to a 100% is you're turning things in. We feel like you are understanding, accomplishing, and 80 is kind of that next level. You're turning some things in, maybe not everything, or you're showing understanding on some things, maybe not everything. And then 60 as a, we're not really getting too much. And 40 is kind of our, we haven't really seen you. So it's weird now trying to reprocess of, I'm not grading everything exactly how it was. And it's going to look differently. And we're going to have to communicate that to the parents of, this is what your child is getting and this is what it means. So.
Definitely, and I think that's very similar here as well. We actually had the talk a couple weeks ago about how even putting things onto a report card for our kids, what is that going to look like? And so, you know, in some senses, it's very hard to say, let's put A's, B's, C's, and D's on there, because learning has been totally different. And so very much so to kind of what you guys have said, it's going to boil down to, have they been participating, and to what degree are they participating? And then in a weird way, we're still dwelling on how to phrase this on our report card, but at the end of the day, it's going to become, did they pass or did they fail? Like, did they do the work to some extent? Did they participate? Did they work with us? Or have they unfortunately like fallen off the face of the earth since this all started? And I think thankfully at the end of the day, the way we hope to phrase it on our report cards, it's not going to necessarily be like a reflection of their actual knowledge, but more so like a reflection of how they worked and were flexible during this learning time away from one another.
That is a huge difference. That's a really good thing to point out, that it's not about the things you typically have on a test. You're really assessing things from a very different angle. What about early childhood, Drew?
Oh, that's a really another topic. It's a topic that's been out there, and I really appreciate hearing all of your responses. It's been interesting for me being here in Shanghai, also working with some of our other LCMS international schools in Hanoi and Hong Kong, as well as some other secular international schools. But I'm also really still tightly connected to Lutheran schools in the U.S. And so I've really been taking in a lot of this information that I find on social media, from talking with other people, just the networking system, but also, you know, listening to podcasts and even watching the evening news from the U.S. that I can get here in Shanghai. I've been able to take in a lot of information, and we've really been working on this topic, as I think you probably have, for a number of weeks already. And our teachers have been wondering, how are we going to do our year-end reports? How are we going to do them? How do we assess our students? Because we really don't know. In early childhood education, we provide resources. And that's part of the regulation that's been set before us, is that we cannot mandate or require that our students do this work in early childhood education here in Shanghai. And obviously, we rely on the parent support. And you probably have the same thing at your schools too, but there's a variety of parent reactions where some are just, you know, going to town and they're like, we got to do this. This is awesome. And there are some who just don't quite understand. You know, they don't feel that they are capable of doing it. Some of them are also still working, and the stress and the anxiety. So there's certainly a big spectrum about that. And because home-based learning is, it requires a technology device, and we don't want our little kids to have this and carry it around with them all day long. We want the parents to have the interaction with them. So we've actually devised in our early childhood division, and then also in our elementary division, what we're just calling a year-end narrative report. And it's very, very simple. It has all the student information. It's just on a regular 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper with our school letterhead, student information. Our school has written what we call a COVID-19 statement that basically says, you know, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the global pandemic, we did not have in-class, face-to-face class sessions from this date to this date. And then we also have another statement under that that's a bit more personalized for our learners. And so we'll do just a short paragraph of what home-based learning looks like for our early childhood students, kind of go into a little bit more into that. And then really there's 3 different sentences that teachers can choose from. One is, you know, Kim, if you were a student of mine and you were just very consistent and regular, we would say that Kim was a regular participant in the home-based learning resources that Concordia provided. That it's just a factual statement. And then as a teacher, if I wanted to really highlight some of the things, if Kim was also very engaged in our Zoom conversations, in our Zoom show and tell, and our Zoom read-alongs, I would maybe add a sentence there.
I'm good at Zoom.
Hey, very good, excellent. I think many people have learned about Zoom or GoToMeeting or Skype. Many people have learned those things. But we also know, again, because families have that unique spectrum, and so we have another statement that says, Kim was sometimes able to participate. And then we have those families who just have the kids haven't done anything. And we don't want to blame it on the kids or put all that weight on their shoulders. So we have a statement that Kim was not fully able to participate. And that's just a factual statement. She wasn't fully able to participate. And then what parents want to know is what's happening for next school year. And so we have a statement, Kim is promoted to kindergarten for the 2020-2021 school year. I think that's really where the parents' eyes will look toward, because they want to know is what's happening for next school year.
I think
I know something that our early childhood had talked about also was even sending home what is expected. So we're not in school to assess this, but here is what it would be expected that your child can do. And that kind of puts it in the hands of the parents then, and they can see, oh, you know what, well, maybe we should work on this part, or, oh, okay, I think we feel good going into next year.
Yeah, Kiara, exactly. I think that's important. We sent home some look-fors. This is what a 3-year-old typically is able to exhibit at the end of the year. This is what a 4-year-old or a kindergartner is typically able to exhibit at the end of the year, just so parents have an idea. These are those different look-fors. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I'm looking at the clock and I'm going to wind this one up, and I'm getting pretty excited about things that we can talk about that next session, especially this kind of switch in roles between teachers and parents, because you've already started to allude to that. So I want to thank you for this 15 minutes. I know you're giving people lots of things to think about, and I would encourage those of you who are listening to go ahead and get on social media, put some of those questions in, get the discussion started and going with other people too, because these are really important ideas. And I want to remind you too that LEA is about more than that spectacular convocation every 3 years. So please go to lea.org and consider joining and taking advantage of all of the wonderful things involved in LEA.